You hustle like hell, you beg, steal and you borrow, and you let anybody in because you're trying to get cash flow and you're trying to get revenue and you're trying to get a reputation and you're trying to do all of the things to establish yourself in the first 2 or 3 years. But how you get to that point is not how you get to the next point. How you get to 100 grand is not how I got to 500,000. How we get 500,000 to 1 million wasn't the same. How I get from 1 million to 3 will not be the same. Why is it acceptable for a service-based business to be trodden all over? It's because, and this is what happens in the beginning of time, when the business owner's getting big, he does everything to kiss the ass, and he's like so fearful of losing the client, doesn't understand who he is, doesn't understand what the client is, doesn't figure out his marketing, hasn't figured out his business plan, hasn't got a clue how to run a business, and it's like just gives it what is it. The phone rings and somebody comes through the door, and 10 years later they're tearing their hair out because they've got a business which is a mess. But at some point along that path, the business owner has to go, hang on, yeah, it was fine back then. And I used to say this to Vicky all the time, right? As this business evolved, we started to get more issues, staff issues, customer issues, payment issues, little things off insurance companies. She's like, it just seems like we're getting more and more of these issues. I was like, yeah, of course we are, because we've got more and more clients. We've got more and more insurance companies. We've got more and more things that are going to go wrong. But on a percentage basis, it's exactly the same. So if we had 2 complaints, or 2 issues, when we had 50 patients on schedule, well, let's say we go 5 for number's sake, that would be 10%, right? 10% of things were going on. So 90% were going right. So now we've got 500 clients a week. We potentially could have 50 things going wrong. We're still at 10%, but we're still at 90. But it feels, because everybody sees the negative more than the positive, it feels like, and that's exactly what she used to say to me all the time, it just feels like we're getting it. I was like, yeah, of course it is. Because there's 10 times more people coming through the doors. And if, in actual fact, if you want to know the real stats on it, when a number increases like that, so if you add a new member of staff to a business, you don't just have one more dynamic to worry about. You actually have a multiple, because that new member of staff has a relationship with you, you, and you. And me has to manage all of them. So bringing one member of staff into this business adds 15 different relationships that I have to manage. So that proportion gets bigger. If you have a brother and a sister in a house, you manage them both. If you put a brother and 2 sisters in the house, now you're managing the interrelationships of them all. So you're not just adding 1 more, you're actually adding 3 more dynamics. And again, that needs to be recognized in business. As it gets bigger, you don't get more problems. You look at the percentage based upon where you are now as a business. So as a business owner, as we've grown, we get to a point after 2 or 3 years, 4 years, where I start to go, okay, listen, we've done what we needed to do, which was raise demand for our service. And if we keep going like this, we won't have a business, because it will be out of control. It will be their rules. It will be like the inmates running the asylum. Now, in the beginning, we have to do it because we're all finding our feet. Nobody comes along and goes, there's a business pre-built for you. There's your money. There's your perfect customer. There's 100 people who want to do business with you, and there's 10 insurance companies who are going to kiss your ass. It's the complete opposite. You hustle like hell. You beg, steal and you borrow, and you let anybody in because you're trying to get cash flow and you're trying to get revenue and you're trying to get a reputation and you're trying to do all of the things to establish yourself in the first 2 or 3 years. But how you get to that point is not how you get to the next point. How you get to 100 grand is not how I got to 500,000. How we get 500,000 to 1 million wasn't the same. How I get from 1 million to 3 will not be the same. That's why staff come and go. That's why patients come and go. The type of patients that we had 5 or 6 years ago don't come here anymore, because they're not the type of patients that were going to take us to £1 million. The companies that we worked with 5 years ago were not going to take us to £1 million. The strategy that we had 5 years ago, when I was a solo practitioner, it was fine, because it was just me. There was no bills to pay. Me and Vicky, overheads were low, everything was down, so I could afford to do certain things that I did back then. So it's very easy for a business owner to sit there and go, Oh, but you've changed. Well, damn right I've changed. Like, that's why the business is still here. That's why it's so successful. Because we recognize at every point of the step, every point of the journey, it has to change. How we get out of Division 3 and into Division 2 will be completely different. How we get into Division 1 will be completely different. And how we win the Premier League will be different. Leicester played differently in Division 1 to win that league than they did to win the Premier League. Does anybody question Ranieri? No, because he won. They won the game. But what's happening in most businesses, it's day to day, they run the same business, they run their business the same way they did when they opened 15 years ago. Failing to accept that the game has changed. So this is all we're doing all the time, is you've got to look at it and go, okay, that worked for us back then. And yeah, you might hear me preach, oh, it's all about the customer, and it is. It's absolutely all about the customer, but the right one in the business. And the right one plays by our rules, because we give them the care, the time, the connection, the engagement that they recognise and they enjoy being part of, so much so that they want to play by our rules. Massive difference. Rather than a business and an organisation with 2,000 people who they're all calling the shots, which by the way is most businesses, and that's why the business owner is great by the time he's 35 and ready to go, ready to wrap up. So we've got to do that. We've got to look at that, and that's not like being arrogant, it's not being whatever, that's just the rules of real business, and it will change again, and it will change again. But it's my job as the business owner to listen to you and go, right, tell me what's going on. Is this a problem with no staff, or is this a problem with using the resources that we've got? Every person in the world today will be saying, I haven't got this, I haven't got the money, we haven't got the staff, we haven't got the time, we haven't got the whatever. It's bullshit. It's a lack of resourcefulness. A lack of resourcefulness. Looking at it and go, what can we do in this current situation with everything that we've got to get everything that we can out of it, without doing what every other business owner in the world would do today. It's like, let's get more staff. Let's get more staff. Well, we've just lumped $2.5 to $3 grand on the bill, on the end of month profits. And as we've seen, we didn't need to do it. So I know from a 10-year business of doing this, December and January contract. And then what the business owner who's just employed the new physical therapist does, he has to pay somebody he didn't need all over Christmas, all over January, and all over February. So that extra profit that he made over them 3 months, which wasn't really profit, he just thought it was just speeding up a bit of cash flow, is now negated by having a physio who sat on his ass doing nothing for 3 months. So that would be my tip for you today. There's no more 1 hour sessions. Towards the end of plans, go to 2 weeks where possible, which it's going to be possible in 8 out of 10. Customers will always do what you tell them to if they think it's in their best interests. And we can justify at the end of treatment plans to say, hey, we've had 4 sessions, we've got you under control, the pain's gone, movement's back. Now what we want to do is just progress exercises, which we will monitor every 2 weeks, because we don't want to discharge you too quickly at the end. In theory, that's probably the way it should be done actually anyway, in theory. You do your first 3 or 4, once a week, and then you do your last 2 or 3 bi-weekly, just to make sure the improvement is sustainable. Don't be quick if it's like, and again, this is another one, DNAs. Once they miss a slot that week, if it's a Tuesday, they don't go in on a Friday. Like, I don't care if it's 2 weeks. Give them the bad news. Oh, I'm sorry, that appointment's been took for next Tuesday. I'll book you back in for 2 weeks. I'd be more than happy to go for 2 weeks. Because they expect to get, if they ring back up on a Wednesday or a Thursday, and they expect to get back in Tuesday, oh, I'm really sorry, somebody else has took that slot. I can go 2 weeks on Tuesday at 4 o'clock. So now you've just bought us some more time. There's so many little things that you can do to buy us time in this thing. And because of the nature of the business where people are paying us cash, majority of people pay cash, that like time difference for 2 weeks, 3 people come in and pay cash. In that 2 or 3 week period, we could have had 4 customers who've come through the door and paid us $2,000 in cash. In that same time frame. This is how impactful you can be in a business if you get this right. Think about that, it's insane. Like those 2 slots, which we could have lost, which we've just gone, I'm sorry, you've missed your slot, we can't book you back in for 2 weeks. Could be taken up by 2 customers who pay cash in there on the day and £2,000 inserted into the business bank account. That's cash flow positive. Make sense? So you've got to be hot on that. DNAs, that type of thing. Don't be in a rush to book them in. Don't be in a rush to get them on the thing, but it can be 2 weeks. Be in a rush to tell the insurance company that we've dealt with it and it was their fault they didn't show up. And the earliest appointment that we could get them because they didn't show up was 2 weeks down the line. Two totally different things. We were talking through this with Blaine. Remember, Blaine said this, right? One of our clients in America, she said, "Oh, I've got like 45 people on a pile waiting to get in." She said, "I want to start sending them emails saying sorry for the wait." I was like, "We don't send them emails saying sorry for the wait. We send them emails saying, this is how I do business. This is why I'm so full. In the meantime, like, here's a couple of exercises. This is normal." Because so again, that's the choice. I can send them an email going, "I'm really sorry. This is a problem. It should never have happened," and blah blah blah. And you're just beginning to dig a hole for yourself, a bigger hole for yourself. Or you send them the same email saying, "Hey, great news. You've been referred to me. There is always a period of time where people get in to see me. That's completely normal. And in the meantime, here are 2 exercises and a resource that I recommend that you go have a look at until your appointment, which will be in 3 weeks' time." That is normal. That is a problem. Same outcome. You have a kick-off. So again, resourcefulness, nothing changed in the world. We just made it appear to be as though this is normal. And if your customer thinks that this is the normal process, they play ball. If you make it out to be a unfortunately or a but, or you can't, hey, yeah, it's no problem. You obviously missed your appointment yesterday. So what we can do is we can get you booked back in for the same slot in the same time in 2 weeks. Oh, okay. That's how that conversation goes. Or you can go, "Well, listen, because you missed your appointment, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get you in, and it isn't really helpful that you missed your appointment. So what we're doing is we're like punishing your ass, and we're not putting you back in for 2 weeks." That's a problem, because they feel like that's not the normal process. From this day forth, forever, and I've done this now 5 or 6 times, and we should never ever not do it. There is always, always, always a way to get a customer in. Always. Don't care. Like, because of all of these like scenarios. When you send me a list and say there's 6 people did not show last week, that pisses me off. Like, that boils my piss, for want of a better word. Like, completely. And those are the people who need to go, okay, you don't respect me and my business and my need to pay all of you. And it sure should you, by the way, as well. When you see that DNA thing, that, right, is basically one kick into the potential that you might not get paid on the 28th. Don't think for 1 second that it isn't. So it's like, how would you feel if you were banking on it, right, and you needed to get money in, and somebody said, I know I was going to give you that 50 quid and I definitely owe it to you, and it's the 27th of the month, and I know your mortgage is due tomorrow, but can we wait till next week? What would you do? Yeah. It's the same. Don't think for 1 second that it isn't. So every DNA, every no-show is basically, you need to look at it like this, is a potential for me not to be able to pay you. Now, luckily it isn't, but in theory, it could be. It's the same principle. You were expecting to pay your mortgage on the 28th because somebody promised you time which you couldn't put elsewhere to go and, hey, don't bother going to work on Tuesday because you don't need to. I've got that 50 quid. So have the day off. I'll give you the 50 quid and you'll be able to pay your bill on the 28th. The 28th rolls around. Oh, I'm sorry, I haven't got that 50 quid. Well, why didn't you just tell me? Because I could have gone to work on the 27th to get the money to pay the thing. That's the same as what goes on with me. Just tell me if you're not going to show because we get somebody else in to give me the 50 quid to make sure I can pay my staff on the 28th of every month. It's exactly the same.